Perfect. Thank you, Cindy. The Assembly Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Mr. Secretary, please call roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblywoman Black.
Here.
Assemblywoman Brown May.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine.
Present.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Ellison.
Present.
Assemblywoman Martinez.
Present.
Assemblyman Matthews. Assemblyman MacArthur.
Here.
Assemblywoman Thomas.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Chair Flores.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Please let the record reflect all members are present. We have a quorum. Good morning, members. I want to remind you to please keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking. Please keep your camera on at all times unless you have an emergency or you have to take care of something real quick. Just give me a quick heads up and everything should work fine. Assemblywoman Considine, nobody can hear me right now? Is that correct?
I think that they're responding to Assemblyman Matthews' question.
Oh, understood.
Mic issues.
Messages popping up that I can't hear you. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't on my end. Thank you, Cindy. And I also wanted to remind those of you following us virtually that we will be doing public comment at the end of the meeting today. I ask those of you wishing to speak in support, opposition, or neutral that you limit your remarks to 2 minutes. And should any of you have submitted anything to us previously and or late, we'll try to get that on the record so that it's reflected for today's bill hearings. Today, we have Assembly Bill 87 and Assembly Bill 147. Both will be presented by Assemblywoman Nguyen. And she asked that I please make it a point to say that we all win with Assemblywoman Nguyen. And we are excited to have you in this committee this morning, Assemblywoman. I'd like to open it up with Assembly Bill 87, whenever you're ready. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It really is a win-win situation, I think, for everyone here, as will be my presentation on Assembly Bill 87. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rochelle Nguyen. I represent Assembly District 10 in Central Las Vegas. I will be presenting Assembly Bill 87. I should say that Mr. Walker will be presenting Assembly Bill 87, but just to give you a little background on this, I know that for many of you, it is very technical. It is very technical for me. I have been working with builders and utilities and counties across this state over the past year, and I still think I have questions about my true understanding of all the language. So I am reliant on a lot of our experts that are in this area, that practice in this, that work in this area, and they will be available to testify and to present on my behalf. So with that, I will turn this over to Mr. Walker.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Matt Walker, for the record, MATTWALKER. On behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders, I'm honored to be 50% of Wednesday today in the committee, and I'll go ahead and kick it over to Nat Hodgson, CEO of the Southern Nevada Home Builders, for some opening remarks about the intent and development of the bill, and then I'll do a very brief section by section and be prepared to answer any questions the committee might have today.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. My name is Nat Hodgson, N-A-T, Hodgson, H-O-D-G-S-O-N, CEO of Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. Assembly Bill 87 is enabling legislation that allows for local governments to adopt an ordinance to streamline procedures for the vacation or abandonment of certain publicly owned or controlled easements that are not currently eligible for administrative vacation. When people ask me all the time about affordability in housing, I often remind them that house prices are a simple mathematic problem. Price of land, price of materials, price of labor, regulatory costs, carry cost, which equates into time. AB 87 seeks to speed product to market, saving time and ultimately money for the homebuyers. This bill saves local government employees time and allows their time to be spent on areas of greater public concern. This policy was a result of a working group with Commissioner Kirkpatrick, Chairwoman Kirkpatrick, and industry representatives to identify ways to increase efficiencies with the planning department processes. Like many local governments, Clark County has more retirements and less experienced hands to allow processing times to keep up with our ever-increasing number of applications. The group identified a handful of changes, one being an administrative processing of technical easement applications, where all relevant parties agree to these applications were approved 100% of the time. So it made obvious sense to start with this one. When the planning department attorneys reviewed this proposal many years ago, they found a statutory obstacle, NRS 354. It only allows public easements, utility easements, to be vacated administratively, not a traffic easement or any other public easement types. When identifying common sense vacation types for this bill, it was important to protect property rights, public participation, when an easement isn't appropriate for an administrative vacation. That's why Assembly 87 does not apply to vacation or abandonment of any street, which Mr. Walker will go into detail with an amendment, vacation of easements that are not supported by all neighboring owners and impacted utilities. It will not apply to vacations of easements that are not supported by the local government that owns or controls the easement. I think it is very important to understand that the owner of the adjacent property and control of the easement would have to agree on this vacation. This enabling legislation can save up to anywhere from 12 up to 20 weeks of processing time, many hours saved by city and county staff. This law will still have the key protections for property owners and the public. The association would like to sincerely thank Assemblywoman Rochelle Nguyen for sponsoring Assembly Bill 87. And with that, I will kick it over to Mr. Walker with the great details of this bill.
Matt Walker, for the record, on behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders. I'll quickly run through a section by section of the bill. Section 1, subsection 6 clarifies that when a street is vacated by a local government, the local government must ensure necessary utility easements are recorded prior to the vacation or abandonment becoming effective. For clarity of the record, this bill would not authorize any change to the way streets are vacated under the current statute. This is simply cleanup language at the request of our utility partners that codifies existing best practice for street vacations. Going down to subsection 11 of section 1, the introductory language for that subsection clarifies that this new enabling language does not in any way limit the existing authority of NRS 278.480 for local governments to administratively vacate easements for public utilities they own or control. That's existing statute and would not be interfered with this bill should it pass. This bill simply proposes an additional authorization for local governments to adopt an administrative process. It also requires that any local government seeking to utilize the enabling language of AB 87 must adopt a new administrative process via an ordinance at a public hearing. This is a key feature that will allow local governments to customize the process for the unique needs of their community in an open forum. Section 1, subsection 11 outlines key guardrails to protect property owners, utilities, and the public when local governments adopt an ordinance pursuant to this bill. Section 1, subsection 11A requires local governments that adopt an ordinance pursuant to this bill to require all applicants to provide proof of support from adjacent property owners and utilities. Subsection 11B requires local governments that adopt an administrative ordinance pursuant to this bill to ensure that the easement is in the public interest before processing administratively. 11C requires the administrative process adopted pursuant to AB 87 to include a process by which an aggrieved party can appeal an administrative decision. 11D clarifies that this administrative vacation ordinance cannot authorize the administrative vacation of a street, sidewalk, or any pedestrian right-of-way. In closing, I would like to thank Assembly members Nguyen and Roberts for helping lead this important safety conversation and common sense streamlining of easements. I would also like to thank representatives of the Laborers Union, Clark County, Las Vegas, Henderson, North Las Vegas, NACO, League of Cities, NV Energy, Southwest Gas, Cox Communications, AT&T. They're all very important easement stakeholders that provided feedback to help improve this concept, and we appreciate their efforts. The sponsor is also working with the city of Henderson on an amendment to Section 1, Subsection 6 that captures their existing practice while still providing protection sought by utilities. The sponsor is also working with Truckee Meadows Water Authority to clarify that this new administrative vacation procedure adopted by local governments can only be used to vacate easements owned or controlled by the local government, which we think is an existing limitation of statute, but we're more than happy to provide that clarity if it provides comfort for our friends at TUMWA. Easements, while not a great topic of conversation for a cocktail party, are vital for the delivery of essential services like power, internet, gas, and water. AB 87 would speed the delivery of these vital services, reduce the cost of infill development and redevelopment, create efficiencies for local government, while ensuring that easement vacations of general public concern still receive an open public hearing. We thank the committee for taking the time to hear Assembly Bill 87 and urge your support for this common sense enabling legislation to help local governments who are doing more with less during these tough budgetary times. I also would like to direct the committee's attention to a presentation that's on Nellis that provides some additional background information and some common sense examples of how this might be implemented by local governments. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity, and I stand ready for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I think what the committee heard was easements are not fun for cocktail parties, but if you want to host a cocktail party, you might want to help this bill. So if we could please start off with Assemblyman Ellison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do have a few questions. Yeah, I have a little bit of have a little knowledge about the abandonment and vacate of property. You know, most of the cities have come up with a policy, you know, over the years and pretty good policies. And there's always usually a utility easement that goes across that. But what happens based on this bill, it doesn't say, that says there'd be no notification. So do you contact, it doesn't say anything in here about contacting the property owners if they've got any interest whatsoever. And I'll give you an example, a lot of them to the back as abandoned alleys or whatever, that they could actually maybe use 5 feet of it or whatever to have access into the backside of their property by gates or entrance or whatever. And it creates a property tax versus a dead zone. So can you answer them?
Matt Walker, for the record, on behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Thank you, Assemblyman Anderson, for the question. Assemblyman Ellison for the question. I'll start by saying that the existing process that local governments have for abandoning or vacating easements that they do administratively, whether that's privatization of a sewer or abandonment of a water utility easement that they no longer use, that process remains in place and uninterfered with by the language of Assembly Bill 87. What Assembly Bill 87 would do is take that tried and true structure and statute and authorize the local government to vacate and abandon other types of easements that they own or control, but they're not public utility easements. So in your example, we attempted to ensure proper protections if it's going to interfere with anybody's access, and if the neighboring and adjacent property owners and utilities haven't affirmatively stated their support for this application, it does not go through administratively. I can say that in the existing and robust process that Southern Nevada jurisdictions have for administrative easement vacations, there is an electronic process for notifying property owners at the time that the county receives an application. The Public Works Department will scrub it for any concerns that they might have on behalf of the local government, as well as notify any utilities. And once everybody has signed off, that administrative process can continue on in its path. And we're really talking about the 80% of easement vacations that are technical, and where utilities and adjacent property owners agree, those are simply the only parties that would ever want to provide meaningful input at a public hearing. So we do recognize that it's important that property rights are respected and that access to property is preserved. And we think that the bill strikes that appropriate balance while still streamlining and expediting those common sense easement vacations. And I'm happy to walk the committee through an actual example of how that would work. And there's one in the presentation, if that would be okay with the chair.
Mr. Walker, please do.
So in the picture presented in the easement, sometimes that providing an example really is the easiest way to understand what this bill is hoping to accomplish. There is a traffic easement located at this intersection. They used to be a four-way stop at Las Vegas Boulevard and what's now Link Lane. The county knows that they're never going to signalize that intersection again, and where the property owner wants to add some additional signage and do some unique things that require the sidewalk to move, they first have to vacate the old traffic easement that still exists. Because that traffic easement is owned or controlled by Clark County in this case, but not a public utility easement, Clark County cannot vacate that easement through an administrative process. Under this bill, the owners of that property, with the consent of their neighbors and with all utilities, can come forward with that administrative vacation. So instead of taking the 20 weeks to go through a town board hearing, a planning commission hearing, and then a county commission hearing where there was no meaningful dialogue or public comment, they could simply do that notification and process this administratively in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. So we think it's a common sense way to speed through those technical easements, clear them out from the local government agendas where the public really does want to spend their time weighing in on issues of public concern. And it's a way to get the folks that were working on the resulting project to work a little bit faster, which we always think is a good thing.
Assemblyman Ellison, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I did, sir. And I totally agree what you're trying to do, and I appreciate that. The only thing that, my biggest thing is, of course, is the property rights also, that's going to be in or around area, but where it says without conducting the hearing. And I agree, because it bogs it out and it runs it out forever. I just want to make sure that it's on the record that the property owners adjacent to every one of these would be notified. That's the only thing I have. Thank you.
Matt Walker on behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Mr. Ellison, especially in the case of undeveloped parcels where really only the property owner might know the ultimate use that they intend for that property, it's critical that they get notice and have the opportunity to weigh in. And where they're not willing to verify by their signature that they support this application, we feel it's vital that these applications go forward to a public hearing. So I very much would support your comments and concerns that you express.
Thank you.
Next, if we can go to Assemblywoman Considine, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Walker. I have an understanding of easements in my district, which is fairly older. There are a lot of easements for people for ingress and egress to people's properties. There are easements on people's backyards where there's been a wall built for utility poles to be put in, which is kind of a significant amount of their property. So I understand that conception of easements, but just to kind of clarify my understanding of what this does, those two examples would not be eligible for the streamlined process. It would only be in new areas, because I think I got a little confused when you said utility poles or utility would not be included in this, and then you said something about including utilities. So if you could just clarify so I understand. Thank you.
Matt Walker for the record on behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Thanks for the question, Assemblywoman Considine. There's an existing statutory process in statute for administrative vacation of public utility easements that are owned or controlled by the local government. So where the local government, say City of Henderson, owns its own water utility, they're able to vacate under existing statute those easements that they no longer intend to use through an administrative process. So again, we're seeking to capture that tried and true process and extend it to other easement types that a local government owns or controls, but they are not public utility easements that are owned or controlled of utilities owned or controlled by the local government. So where a private utility, in your case, maybe NV Energy, has an easement, that also wouldn't be the subject of this process. This process intends to administratively vacate easements that are owned or controlled by a local government. So again, we're referring to traffic easements and other type of kind of common sense easements that may need to be moved or otherwise adjusted to facilitate infill development or redevelopment. In the case that it's the backyard of one of your constituents, the constituent themselves would need to be the initiator of that application, and all the neighboring utilities and property owners would need to be notified of that intent to vacate that easement and affirmatively sign by signify their support of that application by notarized signature in order for that to move forward. So certainly shouldn't be a surprise. And again, the rule here that we're trying to capture really is the 80% of applications where everybody agrees that this is a good thing, and have those move forward a little bit quicker.
Chair, if I could just have a follow-up, please.
Follow-up, please.
So then a homeowner in that situation could reach out to the local government to find out whether or not the easement on their property is owned by the local government, or can someone who has that easement on their property just contact their local government and find out what all of their options are?
Matt Walker for the record on behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Right, with any planning application, typically the first step that I encourage everybody to take, whether that's a business or a private homeowner, is to contact the planning department for their local government, and find out what is there, who owns it, and what the process might be to vacate that. I am not 100% sure a scenario in which a private property owner that's just a homeowner would want to vacate an easement for their home, but that the first step would definitely be picking up the phone and calling the local government, or consulting some of the online tools that are available to Southern Nevada residents in Southern Nevada.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I am looking around to ensure that I have not accidentally skipped anybody wishing to ask a question. Members, at this time, please feel free to unmute yourself and state your name for the record if you have a question. I believe we are good for now. Members, if you have any questions at the conclusion of hearing support and opposition, at that time, I'll encourage you to ask questions again. I understand that we are having a rather technical conversation, and sometimes it takes us a few minutes to just process everything we're going through. And I know that we read things a certain way, but then after we hear the presentation, we start interpreting things differently. So with that, at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 87. My understanding is we do not have somebody wishing to testify via video. If we could please go to the phone on those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 87. If you could please limit your remarks to 2 minutes.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 87, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 500. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Dan Morgan, CEO of the Builders Association of Northern Nevada. The Builders Association of Northern Nevada is Northern Nevada's largest representative organization of the home building and development community. In the construction industry, time is money, and the Builders Association consistently looks for improvements in efficiencies and expedited processes within our local governments. The vacation or abandonment of old and unneeded easements can take weeks or even months, even when there is no disagreement or any dispute regarding the easement. This bill proposes an expedited and very much simplified process to vacate or abandon those uncontroversial and unnecessary easements, allowing for the construction process to progress without undue delays. We thank our colleagues very much at the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association and the bill's sponsor for bringing this bill forward and view it as a common sense and useful tool in the development and construction process. Thank you very much for your time today.
And thank you for calling in. Broadcast, if we could please go to the next caller. Wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 87.
Caller with the last three digits of 079. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is Josh Hicks. I'm an attorney at McDonald Carano. I'm here before you today on behalf of the Nevada Home Builders Association in support of AB 87. The Nevada Home Builders Association is a statewide home building advocacy group that is governed by members of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association and the Builders Association of Northern Nevada. The NVHBA engages on issues of statewide importance to the home building industry, and this is one bill that we see as very positive for the industry throughout the state. You've heard already what this bill does, and I would just reiterate our understanding is that this is a bill designed to put in place a process to get rid of unnecessary public easements as quickly and efficiently as possible. That lowers costs, that expedites building, and at the end of the day, that keeps costs down for the end buyers of homes. So we support this bill. We thank SNHBA for bringing this forward. We thank the bill sponsors for carrying it, and we stand in support of the bill. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony this morning. If we could go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 87.
Caller with the last three digits of 948. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, David Cherry, spelled Davidcherry, and I'm Government Affairs Manager for the City of Henderson. The City of Henderson supports AB 87, and we appreciate the willingness of the sponsor to work with city staff to address the issue identified by Mr. Walker in his opening testimony. We also believe that the conceptual amendment offered by Assemblywoman Nguyen will bring needed clarity to AB 87, particularly in Subsection 11. Thank you.
And thank you. If we could go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 87.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 87, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 87. Broadcast, please.
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 87, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 652, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Ghanem Ham, Ghanem Ham. I am here representing EHV Companies, a local developer in Southern Nevada, and we are opposed to AB 87. While we believe it may be intended to streamline the process in certain circumstances, we also believe that it has the unintended consequence of interfering with private property rights, specifically in regard to certain easements that are controlled by the government but run through the land of private property owners. By allowing abutting property owners to interfere with property rights and opening the door to litigation, by allowing for appeal processes of those rights. We believe that AB 87 as written is vague in some circumstances as it references only property of property owners and no one that actually has an interest in the property. A particular concern are drainage easements that may run through the entirety of a land and now you may have hundreds of neighbors that would be in opposition to the development and can utilize this statute to hold up the development process altogether and eventually seeking court intervention. I do agree that when in development, time is money. And while this is intended to streamline the process, we find that in actuality, it may extend the process. As it sits now, there is no longer than a 3 to 4 month period in which a vacation, abandonment, or relocation of an easement takes place. As it sits now, the statute already authorizes the local governing bodies to establish local ordinances for a simplified procedure. By forcing into this statute the terminology that the simplified procedure must require certain things to happen or else the governing body shall prohibit the vacation or abandonment of these easements unless it is found that the vacation or abandonment will not substantially, unduly, or unreasonably impair the access of any owner of property, and that's the vague portion that doesn't have an interest in the easement or the private property, opens the door to litigation. So we would ask that this be declined as it sits right now. The local governing bodies can already establish and have established by local ordinance a simplified procedure. Additionally, if you're inclined still to grant it, we would ask that you add to the section that is now being asked for amendment that you exclude any easements that run through the property, the private property of landowners.
And thank you for your testimony. Members, if at some point we may have questions, there may be folk that may want to reach back out to you. I'll be sure to provide your information to different members in case they want further explanation. Broadcast, if we could continue with opposition on Assembly Bill 87.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Understood. If we could please go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 87.
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 87, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Assemblywoman or Mr. Walker, but either one would like to come back and perhaps touch on some of the points brought up by both the opposition via phone. And I don't know if either one of you had the opportunity to briefly review the letter that was submitted and attached now as an exhibit, also stating some opposition, concern that in the efforts of trying to streamline, we may actually create some more barriers. If perhaps you could address that for the purposes of the committee's understanding.
I'll go ahead and let Mr. Walker address that.
Thank you. Matt Walker, on behalf of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. I want to thank this committee for their time and consideration of this measure. Speaking to some of the opposition comments, I will first remind the committee that the bill requires not only notice to adjoining property owners, but it requires express consent of the property owners as documented by a notarized signature in order for the administrative vacation application to proceed. Ms. Ham and Mr. Waters, who have provided the opposition testimony today, we've been reaching out to them for well over a year. We have that documented via several attempts, and I think what's typical here is that it's sometimes difficult to understand what a bill proposal does if you aren't willing to have a dialogue with the bill sponsor. So while certainly that's frustrating and may cause some confusion for purposes of today's hearing, we're certainly still ready and available to meet with representatives of EHB and have that conversation. More specifically to Mr. Waters' comments in the letter, I think that there's some confusion that somehow this new process that allows for administrative vacations of new easement types somehow modifies the existing statutory authority of local governments to vacate public utility easements of public utilities that they own or control, and somehow say that would hold up development. In the example given by Ms. Ham, where there's a drainage easement where hundreds of neighbors are concerned about that drainage easement, that easement application is left to what is an existing statute, which means it would go to a full public hearing. And we absolutely want it to, because those neighbors have concerns that they want vetted on the record at a public hearing. So I think that for those who have had dialogue with the bill sponsor and come to an understanding of what the bill does, that they should have a high level of comfort with the requirements associated with this administrative vacation process, where, again, not only is notice given to adjacent property owners and utilities, but their verified consent must be documented in order for a local government to move forward. Lastly, I'll just say that for local governments that say this easement process is not a good fit for their community, they don't have to do any of this enabling legislation associated with Assembly Bill 87. So we're really talking about just local jurisdictions that see some value and would like to adopt an administrative process. That administrative process would be through an ordinance, which again is publicly discussed and put forward in a public forum where property owners like Ms. Ham's development company can come forward and make comments on the record and suggest adjustments to ensure that their rights are protected in their set of unique circumstances where they're redeveloping a golf course.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Walker, and thank you, Assemblywoman Nguyen, for presenting this bill today. To the EHB companies, I encourage you to reach out directly to our committee manager, Judy Bishop. She could then provide you with our information so that we can facilitate a conversation. It's been clearly stated on the record that they have tried to reach out to you on multiple occasions. It is not procedurally correct to not have a conversation first with the bill sponsor and then expressing your opposition, especially when they've given you an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation about what the issue is. So please, in the future, reach out to the sponsor and then have a conversation with the sponsor and then come forth with your opposition. That's how we like to proceed here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 87. And I'd like to briefly provide a 1-minute recess so that we can allow one of our close presenters to come on. So at this point, we're going to 1-minute recess. Please, members, don't go anywhere. Cindy, I know we're waiting for Mr. Tick Sager-Bloom. I am in contact with him that he, in fact, has received the link. I just want to make sure that he's been able to log in. We got him squared away. And I think I see him there. Perfect. Assemblywoman Nguyen, do we have anybody else co-presenting with you outside of Mr. Tixager-Bloom?
That is all I have. I mean, can you go much bigger than that?
That's fine. We can do it. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. And we'll bring her in during the opposition testimony. That's fine. Thank you.
I believe that there was, Bridget Duffy was perhaps going to try to call in during opposition. I know that she could actually provide some additional details.
And I think perfect. All right, the Assembly Committee of Government Affairs will come back to order. It's great to see you, Mr. Sager-Bloom. At this time, I'd like to open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 147. And again, we'll come back to Assemblywoman Nguyen. Good morning, welcome. Whenever you're ready, you can commence.
Hello again. It's just the day of win, 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 win. But again, my name is Assemblywoman Rochelle Nguyen. I represent Assembly District 10, and I will be presenting Assembly Bill 47. Although I have never been in this committee before, and I didn't have the pleasure of serving on it last session, I feel like I may need some more theatrics in my presentations, especially coming after that fascinating easement discussion. Unfortunately, I don't have time to arrange for a horse parade through the streets of Carson, maybe next time, or post a viral TikTok video like your vice chair. I can barely figure out how to open up Facebook. I don't have quite the Twitter game that my co-presenter, former Senator and current Clark County Commissioner Tixager-Bloom has. And I don't have a blog, but I hope that this will be a lively and productive policy conversation because I think it's important. With that, for some background, for those of you who were on this committee last session, you may recognize this bill. It is the same bill that was heard about mid-May in 2019. It was Assembly Bill 539. And if people want to go back and view that previous hearing, see some of the questions and do that, I really would encourage everyone to do that. It was originally presented by Clark County Manager Yolanda King. It received bipartisan support on the Assembly floor. Unfortunately, because of the late introduction of the bill, it did not go further in the legislative process. To avoid some of those pitfalls, the late introduction, I did pre-file this bill in July of 2020 and immediately started to reach out in an attempt to gather support and work on any possible amendments with stakeholders. I am still committed to working with any opposition to make policy that benefits everyone. We have started some of those conversations. I believe that we will continue to have those conversations because I think there is room to work within this enabling language that's contained within Assembly Bill 147. In addition to reaching out to my local district attorney's office in my district, the Clark County District Attorney, and I believe Ms. Duffy will be on the line. I have spoken with her multiple times about this. I also reached out to Dagny Stapleton, the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Counties, NACO, who will also be testifying in support on behalf of their organization that represents the interests of Nevada counties. Previously in 2019, I think, again, because of the late introduction of the bill, they only came in neutral, and I am happy to have their support this go around. For some background, I'm not going to go line by line on I believe it's 73 pages of this bill, but I am going to highlight some of the things that are my intention in pursuing this bill. And for some background, I will give you information on how county council works. And I'm going to give it to you from the perspective of Clark County, just because that's my local jurisdiction. And it does work similarly across the state and other counties. The county council for the Board of County Commissioners, the county manager, and all of the officers that are currently in place are pursuant to NRS Chapter 252. Under the direction of the Office of the District Attorney, which is an elected office. The Office of the District Attorney is also a department of the county. The District Attorney, through the County Council, is the legal advisor for the Board of County Commissioners, the county manager, and all county departments, and is also responsible for defending them in all civil actions across the county, its officers, its boards, its commissions, and its employees. I know that for most of us, when we think of the district attorney's office, we think of prosecuting crimes. But in fact, their reach is far more encompassing than just prosecuting criminal crimes. The county council is the legal advisor for county departments, the commissioners, the county manager, and it is my intention with this bill that I believe that counties should have the ability to hire independent counsel for any of their county departments, including the county commissioners. Under NRS Chapter 266, the cities will also have this authority to create a city attorney's office that acts in this much conflict-free way. What this bill would do is allow the same permissive authority to counties to create county council office under the county manager commissioner's office. Counties currently do not have the authority to create a county council office because that authority sits under the district attorney's office. I'm sure many of your members on this assembly members on this committee might have experienced this conflict in their local county and city government. This always happens when you have different electeds working together. For example, you might see this conflict potentially arise with county commissioners who are elected in their own right, as well as a district attorney who is elected in their own right, and sometimes there is conflict. Or you might see this, I know we have former city council people on this committee, so you might see this with a conflict of interest between an elected prosecutor or city attorney and a city council member or a city or a mayor. And so with that, I'm going to kind of go into how the bill is outlined and what language in the bill would give the counties the authority to create this county council under a county manager commission department. It would be separate from the district attorney's office, and it would allow independence of county council. Obviously, there's an inherent independence issue when you have a department that represents county departments that also resides within another separate elected official. I would hope that our district attorney and county manager's office, as well as the commissioners, have a great working relationship. And I would assume, and I know from experience, that in many counties and many jurisdictions, they do have that great symbiotic working relationship, and there are no issues. However, the fact is that if issues do arise, and there isn't a change in the elected official or elected office between the district attorney's office or even the county commissioners or city council, that there's a different individual that might have different views on the office of the district attorney and what kind of issues and things they would support. I can go into specific details in section 5 and 6 if you think that would be helpful for your members. But at this time, I do have Clark County Commissioner Tick Segerbloom, my neighbor, also my county commissioner, as well as one of our former colleagues in the legislature, also here to present some testimony. So at this time, I will kind of turn it over to him, and I will move that. So Chair, if I could turn this over for Commissioner Segerbloom to present.
Absolutely. I know our vice chair, who has been very active on TikTok, wanted me to make the point that you are the original TikTok. Good morning and welcome, sir. It's great seeing you.
Great to see you, and thank you so much. And I want to make it clear that I'm testifying today on my own behalf. I'm not testifying on behalf of the Clark County Commission. We have not considered this issue or taken a vote as to whether to support it. But by way of background, you'll recall back in 2017, I was chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And at that time, I had a bill similar dealing with the city attorney in Reno. And the same issue came up there, where in Reno, they have elected city attorney. In Clark County and these other counties, we have elected district attorney. The problem is, I think you have an inherent ethical conflict when you have one elected official who's responsible for the attorney or another elected body. And essentially, that's what we're having here is we have a district attorney who's elected on his own or his or her own, has their staff, who is then the attorney for the county commission, which we are elected on our own. I think that just creates an ethical and an impossible ethical condition that this bill would rectify. And just by way of comment, let me just read a little bit there's a letter from John Jones, the district attorney, who I know well and respect. So, and this really is a philosophical debate, but here's what his letter says that I think has been introduced today. It says, historically, civil deputies have been pressured to rubber stamp contracts and programs. They've been pressed to approve use of funds in ways that may conflict with existing law, operating against the best interest of Clark County and its residents, and violate the spirit of ethics laws. Making the civil attorneys answerable to a separately elected officials gives these deputies an important measure of impartiality to ensure unbiased legal advice. So they're on the record saying basically that at the end of the day, they report to their boss, the district attorney, as opposed to us, the Clark County Commission. And again, this is supposed to be our attorneys. As you know, as you're an attorney, you would never want to have your attorney actually be held responsible by somebody else. Your attorney is the person that you hire, you fire, you work with, but they should not have somebody that they report to other than their client, which in this case would be the Clark County Commission. So that's essentially the ethical issue involved. I appreciate Assemblywoman Rochelle Wynn, my coach, I wanted to call her, for bringing this bill. Again, I want to make a point that I'm not here on behalf of the County Commission, but I do know this issue very well, and it's something that is not going away. So I appreciate your hearing it. And if anyone had any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Segerblum, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and if the answer is I just don't know and I can't answer it, it's fine. I'm just confused why the County Commission has not engaged in a formal conversation in this bill. It was here 2 years ago. It was pre-filed, and understandably, we know that there is a concern by some that there is an ethical a dilemma that we are in, and so at times I question how the commission did not have an opportunity to have this conversation. Now I understand we're also in the middle of a pandemic, so that may be the out, but I'm just trying to understand why we didn't engage in this conversation.
Truthfully, I can't answer that. Assemblywoman Wynn may have a better answer, but it came on my radar, I think, what's today? I think maybe early in the week or last week, but we have not, and if that's something that would be of concern, I think we could bring it to the commission's attention.
And Rochelle Wynn, for the record, I think I might be able to help clarify some of the conversations that took place. The county commission is under open meeting restrictions, so they can't have these kind of conversations there. So it has to be something that takes place individually. I did reach out to the lobbyists and the government affairs team for Clark County in particular. And I know that when I introduced the bill, as most of the members of this commission or this committee are aware, we had an election that wasn't even certified until pretty late. And so there were a lot of new members to the Clark County commissioners that were added in particular to that county that I think they were trying to figure out where they stood on this particular bill. Obviously, it is a different makeup on the county commission than it was in 2019. And so I think that is some of the difference in, how we were able to get people on board.
Understood. And
but like I had said before, I will continue to have these kind of conversations. I would encourage people that have concerns or have ideas or solutions to fix some of these conflicts to definitely reach out to me.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add, I don't want this to reflect at all on Mary Ann Miller, our county council. Truthfully, she's been great, and so, but it is just a basic inherently ethical conflict that I think we need to address, and so I appreciate Rochelle bringing this forward.
And thank you again, Mr. Segerblum. And then it wasn't my intent to just single you specifically out or your commission. That I was just curious to understand if the conversations were happening and/or if not, why. But
I think the other thing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chair. Rochelle Wynn, for the record. We did reach out to NACO. I thought that because there are so many different counties, there's so many different people that are potentially involved in the discussion. One of the first groups that I reached out to was like Dagny Stapleton. I asked her to bring this to her members of NACO because I knew that they would have like a representative voice. Previously in 2019, I think because of the late introduction, they were in neutral on this bill. But after taking a vote, convening and fully discussing this as a membership and as an organization, they decided to come in and support. And so she will be on the line to provide support testimony.
Understood. Understood. And I know really the nature of the questions were really triggering from pages 5 and 6, where I see that we have some conversations about populations, which we're trying to capture certain governments, but not others. But let me go to Assemblywoman Anderson first.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Nguyen. Feel like I'm part of a winning team today, as well as Commissioner Sager-Bloom. It's always nice to see you. My question has to do with, I've got two questions actually. The first one has to do with Section 5, Section 5, and then Subsection 2, where all of those roles are being defined, because I was not here last session in this role, so I was not paying attention to this bill in May. Does the current DA or their appointee, maybe it's Ms. Miller as referred to in Commissioner Sager-Bloom's comments, does the current DA currently attend all of the county commission meetings and perform these other duties as well? Or is there other designations that are necessary that the county commission actually has to privately hire individuals to be part of this?
I can tackle some of it, and maybe Commissioner Sager-Bloom might have it. I'm sorry, Rochelle Nguyen for the record. Section 5 of the bill, it authorizes the Board of County Commissioners to create an Office of County Counsel to perform many of those like non-criminal duties that would otherwise be assigned to the District Attorney's Office. I will tell you this, the civil DAs that are performing a lot of these county counsel, they're actually housed in the Clark County building currently. The District Attorney's Office and their employees and staff are all county employees currently. It is the elected District Attorney, and then there is the county counsel. It authorizes the county manager to, with the confirmation of the Board of County Commissioners, to appoint county counsel. So, for example, they do this with the Public Defender's Office. So the public defender is not an elected position. It is appointed by the county commission. So they set forth the qualifications for the appointment of that county counsel, or that's what Section 5 does. That's what they do similarly anyway, which are similar to the qualifications for a required candidate for office for the district attorney. Our current district attorney was initially appointed by the board or the county commissioners in Clark County to serve in that position. He later ran for that office, but he was appointed by Clark County. And they looked at some of these things that they would use normally, and that's what is the intent in incorporating that into this statute. Does that make sense?
It does. And so thank you and so I just wanted to make sure that that is kind of what the current role is, that this allows for the county commissioners to be the ones to be the client more than the DA's office.
Yeah, and the district attorney's office currently, I didn't answer this as well. Existing law requires the district attorney to perform certain legal duties for the county, including legal opinions to the Board of County Commissioners, the county townships, as well as district offices. They are currently required to attend meetings of the Board of County Commissioners. And in fact, they are required to attend those even if some agencies have hired private counsel in addition to that. I think of the school board. I think that's one of the agencies where, the county, the school board has like independent counsel, but also the district attorney's civil division should probably be there as well. So they're responsible for reviewing all contracts under consideration for the board, as well as drafting ordinances. And I imagine when things are outside the scope of the knowledge of the civil DAs, I think they have a process to contract out with experts in that area as well. And I'm sure Commissioner Segerblum might have some more information on how much of that stuff they do contract out.
Thank you. So, and truthfully, her answer was perfect. I just wanted to acknowledge Assemblywoman Anderson. As you know, Bernie taught me everything I know, so life has gone full circle. But now I'm testifying before you that it's an honor. And your father was the best man ever in history.
Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you very much. I always love it when Dad gets brought into the room, but then I also think, oh my gosh, now he's looking over my shoulder. So then I'm so happy that you brought up the school district, Assemblymember Nguyen, because I was going to ask that very question. In Washoe County, we currently have a difference of opinion from two of our local governmental entities. The county commissioner is saying that the Incline Village, there was a tax issue. School district is being charged for a large amount of money. So there's a issue between that. So when there are two entities such as that, is the DA currently the one that makes that decision, or is it the county commissioners who make that decision as to how to proceed? I guess is what I'm asking is, when two different bodies are having a problem and they both are being represented by individuals from the DA office, who makes the decision as to how to move forward? Does it go to any sort of arbitration? Does it go to any sort of public hearing? How is that handled at this time?
Well, I think that's part of the conflict. So, I'm sorry, Rochelle Wynn for the record. I will give you an example. It's not necessarily in that, but it's, more in my wheelhouse. So I'm an attorney. I understand conflicts. I know that many on this committee may not be as familiar, but I believe most jobs and most professions have similar conflict issues that they have to be aware of. We eliminate conflicts because it protects due process. Anyone that knows me, I am a criminal defense attorney, but protecting the Constitution and making sure that everyone has their due process rights and notice. I mean, that's one of the foundations of our justice system. So, for example, in my professional capacity, I can't be a lawyer for a criminal defendant and also be that same lawyer for an alleged victim in a crime. I can't come into court and say, my client X is innocent and it is, Y client, and then, use information that I know about my representation of Y client to help the other client in the case, if that makes sense. And this is exactly what is happening under our current system. So to give you an example, the district attorney's office represents the agency, the Department of Family Services. The Department of Family Services, they get involved a lot of times, like if children are taken away from homes. They have very strict federal and state guidelines, during that family reunification effort. They have strict guidelines that have specific requirements that aid in making sure that when they are reunifying parents with their children, that those parents, are getting appropriate counseling, that there's supervision that aids in a safe and continued safe reunification of families. The conflict that we see arise a lot of times in my profession is that same district attorney is simultaneously arguing in a criminal court that against this reunification effort, against their own agencies. So their actions at times are in direct conflict with the federal guidelines for reunification. These two things cannot occur in the same office. I'm not saying that they can't occur simultaneously. If a district attorney with their authority and their information and investigation believe that someone should be prosecuted for child neglect or other crimes, and they are protecting the interests of the state and protecting the interests of those victims and family, they should be able to do so without being in a position where they are in direct conflict with their other attorney in their same office. So that's kind of an example of where it currently exists. This law, obviously, with the creation of a county council office, there wouldn't have that conflict any longer. So if that kind of helps explain it.
Clarifies it so much. So thank you so much for that. Perfect. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Thomas.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Assemblywoman Nguyen, for the presentation, and Commissioner Sigelblom. I really do appreciate the time and effort that you have taken in presenting AB 147. I just have a question for clarity. Is this position county council? Will this be an elected position or an appointed position?
Thank you for that question. Rochelle Nguyen, for the record. Thank you, Assemblywoman Thomas. It would be an appointed position. Like I imagine, this isn't mandatory. This is no mandate. This is just enabling language to allow counties that would like to create this division to do so. I don't see it as being an added cost because these already exist. And so, and a lot of times they already exist within the county building and the county structure. They're already county employees. They are already existing in that, space already. So I imagine it would be an appointed process, much like other appointed processes where you have to get the full, majority vote from the full county commission.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thomas, if I could just follow up on that. That's the exact problem in Reno, because Reno has an elected city attorney. And so that city attorney goes out to the voters on his own, but then he comes and gives advice as the attorney for the city council who are elected on their own. And that's where the conflict is. You can't, in my opinion, you shouldn't have the county council or the city attorney should be picked by the people who are his or her clients, which are the elected officials. And so if they're elected, that creates an inherent conflict right there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Vice Chair Torres.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Nguyen, for the presentation. I do appreciate it. I appreciate this legislation, and I want to just begin by saying that any day we can see the original TikTok and a presentation from Assemblywoman Nguyen is a double win for me. So thank you so much for being here. My question, I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about if whether or not this was a unique model. My understanding is that this model has been implemented in other states, so this isn't like we're recreating the wheel. This is something that has been done before around the nation.
That is correct. Again, we are not reinventing the wheel here. Most larger, a lot of states have this. In fact, most of our neighboring states have this. I believe, I'm trying to get my notes here so I can give you an example of the states that were doing this. Of course, I can't find it. But I do have that information. This is not a unique situation to Nevada. This is not something that we don't do in other states, and it's something that would be fairly easy to implement. Like I said, it is an efficient way to ensure that all elected and all divisions and agencies have a conflict-free and their due process rights are protected as well. So I can get the committee some of that additional information about how this is done in other states. I just don't have it offhand.
Yeah, and I think from the presentation, because I did review the presentation from AB 539 for the 2019 legislative session, I know that I think it was Colorado, Washington, California, and Oregon. So definitely there's other Western states that have served as a good model of this and shown its efficacy.
And I apologize if I can follow up, Assemblywoman, but the truth is this is a great legal question that lots of law review articles have been written about it, and it's a trend over the country to go ahead and make these independent because I said there's just an inherent conflict, which is not illegal, but it's unethical.
And thank you, Vice Chair. Next, we can go to Assemblyman Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, confirm for me, if you would, that you can hear me, please, because I know I had some audio issues earlier.
Yes,
Rochelle Lynn, for the record, we could definitely hear you, Assemblyman Matthews.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Assemblywoman. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you as well, Commissioner. Question just on the fiscal side of this. I know that there's no fiscal note on this. Presumably, that is because the assumption would be that as this new position would be, or these new functions would be brought into this new position, as that role or those roles grow, they would be simultaneously removed from the district attorney's office. And so that's why it's assumed that this would be cost neutral. It seems to me that there would at least be some new costs entailed, since we are creating this new position and we're not eliminating the DA's position. I'm just wondering if you can speak to that and kind of clarify why this is assumed to be cost neutral.
Just in my conversations with NACO, as well as my current representatives, obviously in the Clark County Commission, and my knowledge of how it is, these already exist. They're already paid for by the county. They already exist in county buildings. You're a county employee if you are a district attorney. Or you are a staff or investigator or any one of these like staff people that are in these agencies. So they are all, there. So I can't imagine how this would have some added cost because they would be absorbed into what they are already doing as well. And I imagine that there wouldn't be a changeover for a lot of the people's positions. They would just be going about their business, and instead of being called a district attorney, they would now be called county counsel. Their job responsibilities to their clients would not change. There would be no disruption to that. So I don't know how that would be in case. I'm sure if there were added costs, we would see additional fiscal notes that would be attached to this, and I haven't seen any of those so far.
Thank you.
And just to point out again, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Assemblyman Matthews, Rochelle Lynn for the record. It's not mandated. It's enabling language. It is something that counties and cities can choose to do if they want to. This gives them the structure and the ability to create a conflict-free environment for both elected officials.
And
thank you for that. Mr. Chair, follow-up question, please. Oh, sorry, Commissioner.
If I just answer it, let me just say, going back to history, it's pretty amazing to see you on this side of there and I'm on the other side. So roles do flip over a lifetime.
You never know where life's going to take you, do you?
Exactly. But going back to the question of the fiscal note, the truth is, not that we want to do this, but right now we can't hire or fire anyone. That's our district attorney's job. So this would give us the ability to reduce salaries, raise salaries, move people around, hire people, fire people, which we don't have it currently.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, a follow-up question, if I may.
Please follow up.
Thank you. And thank you both for your answers. On that topic of conflict, and I certainly understand the arguments you're making to that effect. On the other hand, just to kind of come at it from the other perspective, arguably there is value in these functions being left to the district attorney, in the sense that what we have as a result of that is some independent oversight, or you have a separately elected individual who is in that function, and arguably that helps to kind of strengthen what we all sort of recognize as the system of checks and balances, rather than bring it all into one governmental body. And so I'm wondering if a solution might be that in the event of a clear identified conflict of interest for district attorney on a particular issue, then maybe independent counsel would be brought in. But I'm just wondering if there's any concern about losing the potential oversight that may result from having this, this function being performed by an independent body. Thank you.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I don't think so. I think you have your checks and balances system there. If you were going to go out and hire an attorney, you would probably, and we had a case against each other, you would not want to have my attorney represent both you and me in that conflict between us. And so I think we do need to remove that, and that's what this bill would do, or it'll allow enabling languages for the counties and the district attorneys to decide whether or not their relationship was working or not. This just gives them the option to be able to do so when that conflict does arise. Like I had said before, I am definitely open to coming up with other potential solutions that correct this conflict and still maintain the integrity of the representation that people are receiving from the district attorney's office or conversely a county council office.
And I apologize to Senator Matthews, but if I can answer that too. Just imagine if the governor hired the LCB legal attorney. That's what we're talking about here. I mean, you work enough with the LCB attorneys to realize how important it is that they give you advice that is in your best interest, answer your questions. But if the governor had hired them and could fire them, you might question that advice.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Assemblyman Matthews. Members, any additional questions? At this time, I don't think I have any. However, please feel free to unmute yourself and state your name for the record if you have an additional question and I accidentally skipped you. I don't see any. Members, feel free to ask questions at the conclusion of opposition, support, and neutral, as I am confident that maybe more questions will come from that. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 147. Broadcast, if we could please go to the telephone lines, and I'd like to remind those of you who will be testifying in support, opposition, neutral, that you limit your remarks to 2 minutes.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 147, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 037, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Tanya Brown, TONJABROWN, advocates for the inmates and the innocent. Good morning, Chair and committee members. We are in support of AB 147, and thank you, Assemblywoman Wynn, for bringing this forward. We would like to see Section 5 to include subsections K and L. K starting with, if the County Council receives information that pertains to any public official having committed an act of possibly wrongdoing that has been brought to the commissioners by way of another public official or private citizen, the County Council must inform the county commissioners of their responsibilities and his or her legal duties. L, if the county commissioners and or the county council receive information by way of another public official and or private citizen of a possible wrongdoing committed by any public official, the county council must inform the county commissioners during the public meeting that the county council will be asking the Nevada Attorney General and or the United States Department of Justice to conduct an independent investigation. You might say that you could file ethics complaints and with the state bar, or whatever the case may be, but there are times that they have come back and said they lack jurisdiction, whether it's the ethics, state bar, or the courts. And I base this in part, I've provided you with some documentation, and I base why I'm asking this in part based on that, and I've submitted. I'd like for you to take a look at the paragraphs 31 through 58, 88 through 90, 103, 96 through 104 through 108, paragraph 117, pages 65 through 66, 69, 120, 125, and 126. I think we need more transparency in government and not less of it. And by adding these two, I believe we would have more transparency. Thank you and have a great day.
And thank you for testifying. If we could please go to the next caller wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 147.
Caller with the last three digits of 863. Please solely state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the Assembly Government Affairs Committee. For the record, Dagny Stapleton, D-A-G-N-Y, S-T-A-P-L-E-T-O-N. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide testimony in support of AB 147 on behalf of Nevada's counties. AB 147, as you heard, would enable county commissioners to have a choice in the type of legal support that they get for the critical decisions they make. Many of our members expressed their sincere satisfaction in the help, support, and legal expertise they receive from their respective district attorneys. However, they also agree that there may be instances where they would need the ability to hire an independent staff attorney to support them on civil matters. As the committee is aware, DAs are separate county elected officials with a wide range of responsibilities, including, and importantly, as criminal prosecutors. In addition to those duties, DAs also provide legal advice to each of their county commissions on everything from complying with the open meeting law, legal review of the many contracts that the counties enter into, and representing the county in court proceedings. As Assemblymember Nguyen outlined, it is possible that there could be conflicts between the interests of an elected DA and the needs of the county commission, and we have heard concerns from our members about some of those examples that she cited. We've also heard from some of our smaller counties that while their elected DA may have expertise in criminal law, it is possible that they may have no expertise or interest in the other areas of law where the county commission may need legal support. It's because of that, if because of that a district attorney was not willing to provide the counsel that a commission needed, or if the county commission felt that they needed their own or different legal counsel, this bill would provide them that option. I would also like to share that in some of our very small counties, there are no county managers and there may be limited staff. In those counties, the DA plays a really important role helping provide administrative and managerial support. And those counties truly do depend on their DAs, and they will tell you how much they value their help and expertise. Conversely, though, if in one of those counties the elected DA was not someone who was willing to provide the broad range of support to the county that the county commission needed, the commissioners may then also want the option of finding another attorney to support them on non-criminal matters. And the commission, of course, would do this so that they could have the support they need to in turn do their jobs and provide all the important services that counties do. And I think that it's this sentiment of county commissions being able to carry out their duties and ensure that they have all the options available to get the legal support and advice that they need in any situation is really what motivated our members across the state to support this bill. And I would add that our members did discuss this bill in a recent public NACO board meeting and voted in consensus to support it. And then finally, regarding the fiscal impact, I would echo what Assemblymember Nguyen and Commissioner Segerblom said. The bill is enabling the county could make the choice based on the fiscal impact to have this. And already some counties are paying for similar services in-house. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to provide testimony and for the opportunity to speak in support of the bill. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. If we could please go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 147.
Caller with the last three digits of 556. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Anne Marie Grant, A-N-N-E-M-A-R-I-E, Sister Thomas Purdy, murdered by Reno Police and Washoe County Sheriff's Office. I am in support of the bill. I do believe, as the previous caller, Ms. Brown stated, it should have an amendment that if a private citizen or public official if the council becomes aware of either illegal or unethical acts of a public official by way of a private citizen or another public official, I think the bill needs an amendment that mandates said council to put in a request for an investigation by the Attorney General's office and or the Department of Justice.
Ma'am, if I could have you hold for a second. I just want to clarify. You're speaking in support of the bill as it is. So I just want to make sure that the record is properly reflecting your where you stand on this bill. If the bill were to move as it is now, are you in support of it?
Yes. I'm just
Okay.
making a suggestion. And the reason I make this suggestion is on 7/16/2019, I attended a police accountability event. On July 17, 2019, I personally helped Ms. Brown file a complaint at Reno Police against Reno City Manager Kyle Hall. Ms. Brown brought this information before a joint meeting at the County Commissioners on August 6, 2019, and provided them a copy of the police complaint we filed. The Washoe County DA's office via Attorney Paul Liparelli was present along with Kyle Hall, Reno City Attorney, who the complaint was filed against. The complaint detailed an ongoing battle with the Washoe DA's office, Reno PD, and other law enforcement agencies on their cover-up of wrongdoings and protection of public officials. Kyle Hall had publicly admitted on July 16, 2019, that he sat on a perjury complaint against now Reno Judge Shelley T. O'Neill until the statute of limitations ran out. July will be 2 years since this complaint was filed. And current legal counsel for the Washoe County Commissioners have been made aware of a multitude of illegal acts. County Commissioners Council should be mandated to act when information regarding illegal activities is brought before the board. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could go to the next caller wishing to speak in support of Assembly Bill 147.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 147, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Understood. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to opposition on Assembly Bill 147. I do see Ms. Duffy, who will be joining us via video. We'll start the opposition with you. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I would first like to thank Assemblywoman Nguyen and Commissioner Sager-Bloom. I've had some opportunity to discuss with both of them the reason I'm coming in opposition specifically to Section 5, Subsection 2I. I'm hoping that we can get to some sort of resolution in this matter, but as of today, I have not given them my proposed amendments, but I will continue to work with them. I understand there's a perception problem with conflict between my division and the criminal division. And by my division, I'm talking about the juvenile division for the Clark County DA's office. So in Clark County, there is a deputy district attorney that is assigned to the civil division to represent DFS in lawsuits, contracts, MOUs, personnel matters for employees. That DDA does not work under my leadership. In my division, I have 21 deputy DAs that prosecute petitions of abuse and neglect that result from investigations of Child Protective Services. And that is what Section 5, Sub 2, Sub 1, or Sub I would take, which is that reference to NRS 432B. In the juvenile division, I also have 9 deputy DAs that prosecute petitions involving acts of juvenile delinquency, or what some would call crimes against crimes children commit. I do not call them that, but it's the easier way to understand it. And that is under Chapter 62. And specifically, Chapter 62 says they are not criminal cases, so they land under my juvenile division. And there is also 1 civil deputy DA that represents the Department of Juvenile Justice Services for those same issues of contracts, lawsuits, MOUs, personnel matters for employees. That civil DA does not report to me. AB 147 would fragment my juvenile division, leaving a portion to be absorbed under the criminal division, those cases being prosecuted under NRS 62, and a portion of my division to go under county council, which would be those cases under NRS 432B. I took my position as chief of the juvenile division in 2012 under the appointment of DA Wolfson. In 2014, And at that time, I reported to the assistant district attorney for the criminal division. But in 2014, then County Manager Burnett and the county commissioner saw fit to create my own position so that I directly reported to the DA and get me out from underneath that criminal division, which makes sense because you really need a leader of a juvenile team that understands the nuances of children and families, not criminal cases. I've never been a criminal prosecutor, so I just like to say that for the record as well. I've always handled cases involving children and families. So now I am my own assistant department head reporting directly to the elected. And that did definitely recognize that need for independent leadership for these specialized cases. I'm one of the original founders for the Harbor. I work closely with the school district for kids in foster care and juvenile delinquency systems. All are kids of our school district. I've dedicated myself to ending the school to prison pipeline through diversionary practices and school justice partnerships. I have a team of amazing deputy DAs that I have led to share the same values that I share of looking at children and families in a unique way. This perceived conflict that is going on, I want everybody to be clear, it's not attorneys from my division that go to the criminal cases and prosecute the same cases. They are two separate deputy DAs. We do have some protections in place already. We have an MOU with the county that allows for a conflict resolution that goes all the way up to the assistant county managers for the Department of Family Services. We also offer civil protections to families in family court that anything they say in our cases, and NRS 432B will not be used against them in the criminal case. We do have some things in place already. I look forward to working with the sponsors of this bill to see how I can improve on that and address any of these negative perceptions that we have of the conflict. I thank you all for your time and allowing me to testify via video. It is very important to me. My opposition, again, is based on the negative impact that I would see to juvenile cases if my division is fragmented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you again, Ms. Duffy, for calling in. If we could have you answer at least one question that I know that we have from Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much, Ms. Duffy. It's so excellent to see you. I know that I haven't had the opportunity to see you too frequently in the Government Affairs Committee, but I did have the pleasure of working with you in the Interim Juvenile Justice Committee and on the Judiciary Committee last session. And I guess my question is if you could just kind of give us an example of what that reunification looks like. And you mentioned that there is a curtain between the role of the district attorneys of the Department of Family Services and their role in the prosecution against the child abuse cases and neglect cases. So if you could just talk about and give an example of what that would look like, a step-by-step for a case.
I'm making sure I'm unmuted. So Bridget Duffy for the record. Yeah, so I think understanding your question, Vice Chair Torres, is my attorneys, so 432B cases, and I'm using that reference because that's what's in AB 147. So those would be the cases brought forth based upon investigations of a child protective service agency, not investigations of a police agency. So those cases have very fast timelines. We move very quickly. Our goal is reunification. And that goal remains no matter the abuse or neglect. So we have cases with child homicides. My attorneys in the juvenile division handle child sexual abuse cases, child homicide cases with surviving siblings. So we handle very parallel cases to the criminal division. But our cases have expedited timelines. So criminal cases could take a year, or more to prosecute, especially on serious cases such as child homicides. So we move very quickly, but we also always start with a step of reunification. So we first of all start with getting the family to admit, or at least admit that we could prove the case. But in order to do that, we offer them protection, saying we're not going to use our case against you in the criminal case. And that's just any civil case. Anything you say in a civil case can be used. So if they start talking about, what caused the abuse, their frustrations, the parents' own trauma, we try to protect that already through that firewall. Now, what goes on in the criminal cases, while there is this perception that we are very involved with those cases, honestly, we don't really know what's going on most of the time because there isn't really a very good flow of communication. But when we get to a part where there could be an internal conflict between a criminal deputy DA and my deputy DA for the 432B case, we have an internal resolution process, which I go then to the equivalent of me, which would be the assistant DA on the criminal side. We then take it up to DA Wolfson. And then if DA Wolfson cannot resolve that conflict, then we have an agreement that we can go to an assistant county manager. Now, I think we could better formalize that process if that makes everybody feel stronger. I think it's easily done to formalize that process, but we're just two different tracks of cases, although the evidence is still the same. I hope that answers your question.
I think so, and I guess maybe I'm not understanding completely, but I'm not seeing any reason why this wouldn't help formalize that process.
Well, Bridget Duffy again for the record, Vice Chair Torres, it would take us out from under the same department head. That's absolutely for sure. I don't know that it would end what still goes on. I mean, a criminal attorney can still go and get a no contact order while we're working on reunification. The conflict is we all report to the same department head. However, we do have a conflict resolution process that's in place. My biggest concern is, and then just to be clear, I'm only speaking on behalf of my division. The bill as a whole, I believe, has some other opposition that's coming in from the Nevada District Attorneys Association, but you're talking about fragmenting and taking a delinquency team and putting them back under criminal, which is, there has been a lot of work that has gone on in the past 8 years, 10 years to get that out from under a concept of being criminal and into a concept of being juvenile delinquency and diversion and assistance. So that fragment and that taking apart the division is, in my opinion, after having done it for a long time, not going to be good for children and families. We need both divisions to report to the same person, however that may look.
And Madam Vice Chair, I just wanted to confirm that you're good with questions.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Duffy.
Members, any additional questions for Ms. Duffy? I want to take this opportunity, as we do have her via video, for you to ask questions should you have any clarification that you'd like on the record. Seeing none, broadcast, if we could please go to the phone lines and continue with the opposition on Assembly Bill 147.
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 147, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 630, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. This is Ron Cordes with the Clark County District Attorney's Office. I am appearing on behalf of the Clark County Prosecutors Association. I'm one of the deputies that's assigned to Bridget Duffy's division, and I've been in the District Attorney's Office since 2004, assigned to child welfare cases. On behalf of the Prosecutors Association, there's an opposition to the bill as it relates to the perception that the child welfare deputies would be removed from the District Attorney's Office and removed from the association. There's concern that I think everybody would be familiar with, given the current state of affairs that have taken place over the last year. The deputies are very concerned about their jobs, their ability to continue to work on these very important child welfare cases. It's a very stressful environment that the child welfare deputies work in, and given the global pandemic that's taken place, over the last year, the changes to the job requirements, the uncertainty of where the deputies will land is causing a lot of anxiety and concern moving forward. I've been in the office since 2004 and served under several different elected DAs as well as the county commissioners. And over the course of the time that I've been in the office, there have been opportunities to work through the conflicts that have been identified by the speakers in support of the bill, as well as the Assemblywoman who drafted the legislation. And it has been worked through to avoid the conflicts that have been identified by creating the MOUs that were mentioned by Ms. Duffy, as well as also addressing just conflicts on specific cases. And as an attorney, it's important for this committee to know that the attorney is responsible for handling potential conflicts and identifying their ability to proceed on cases. And so each of the attorneys assigned to the juvenile division, child welfare, are very versed in whether or not to proceed on cases, what information to provide. And so I think it's important that the group of attorneys stay under the district attorney's guidance. We've already been able to work through most of the concerns that have been expressed on cases. And I think that the removal of the 21 attorneys from the current association would negatively impact the overall association of the prosecutors in Clark County to handle the needs of the community as well as protect the victims here. And I think it's important that going forward, there's some stability provided for these deputies who are doing the best they can under these very trying circumstances. And I have any time that you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer those for you.
And thank you. Members, any questions? I don't believe we have any. Thank you for calling in. If we could please go to the next caller wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 147.
Caller with the last three digits of 642. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is David Watts-Vial. I'm the Washoe County Assistant District Attorney for the Civil Division, representing Washoe County District Attorney Chris Hicks and the Washoe County District Attorney's Office. We oppose this bill because it threatens the independence of judgment the county's attorneys must have to provide unbiased and objective legal advice to their clients, and because it disenfranchises voters by removing their ability to choose the attorney who will represent not just the Board of Commissioners, but all of the officials, many of whom are similarly elected by the voters. Removing the civil division from the DA's office will increase the risk that advice provided by county counsel is affected by the specter of termination by the manager or the board if they don't like the advice that county counsel gives to the manager or to the board, or even if they don't like the advice that's given to other elected officials. The role of the DA in the civil division is to review the law, the facts of individual situations, and then provide the client with unbiased legal advice to assist them in making those decisions. The client might disagree, they may not like the opinion, but the DA providing the advice must be free to give that advice without the fear of losing their job simply because the client does not like it. And it should be noted that in circumstances where the law is not black and white, or where the client just disagrees with the attorney, the client is always free to disregard the advice that's been given to them. The advice guides decisions, but the decisions are made by the client, not the attorney. This law will increase the likelihood that attorneys will be working with the knowledge they could be fired simply for providing advice the manager does not want to hear or that the board doesn't want to hear. And that increases the possibility that the attorney will provide advice that the client wants to hear. even if it is not the best advice. While we don't believe this is an immediate concern in Washoe County, this bill also makes it possible for a board or manager to seek out an attorney who is more amenable to providing them cover for the actions they take rather than providing objective legal advice. It also increases the risk of hiring an attorney on the basis of political favoritism. The job could get awarded to an attorney or a firm that politically supports a majority of the Board of Commissioners, or maybe someone that has a relationship with the manager, rather than a DA who was elected by the people. As to the stated concerns about ethics, as a general rule, there is no conflict with the DA representing other officials or the boards of county commissioners. And the fact that there is no inherent ethical conflict with that representation can be found in the fact that the DA has been doing so by law for decades. The concerns and conflicts created by having a board of commissioners appoint their own attorney and the attorneys for their fellow elected officials are certainly greater than any that are presented under the current law. As to conflicts, generally speaking, there is no conflict until the interests of the attorney and the interests of the client clash, or the interests of two clients clash. And when that happens, the ethics rules require the attorney to notify the client and be given the opportunity to hire another attorney. So there is a process to handle conflicts when they actually do arise, and the attorneys all have the same ethical duties. This bill also disenfranchises voters from electing the attorney that they want to provide advice to all of the county's elected officials and departments. The Civil Division of the DA's office provides advice and guidance to more than 60 clients made up of elected officials, boards, commissions, county departments, all in addition to the Board of County Commissioners and the Office of the County Manager. This bill will increase the possibility that a board could choose an attorney in an effort to exert undue influence over other government officials, including other elected officials, such as the assessor, the treasurer, the sheriff, and others. The new law will now allow a manager and or a board of commissioners to choose the attorney or law firm that provides the advice to their fellow electeds and presents the same conflicts, which are the claim basis for this bill. This increases the risk that the attorney chosen by the board will once again be looking over their shoulder out of concern that the board or the manager not only doesn't like the advice that they receive, but they don't like the advice that the attorney is giving to other elected officials. The better policy is to allow the taxpayers to decide who their attorney will be, who the attorney for the county, not just the board, will be. This legislature went to great pains just a few months ago to assure that every citizen in Nevada who was eligible to vote was able to vote. This law disenfranchises those same voters by removing their ability to choose the county's attorney and giving that power to the county boards of commissioners and managers. The better policy is to allow the taxpayers and the voters to decide who their attorney will be. We oppose this bill because it disenfranchises those voters and because it increases the risk that elected officials will no longer receive independent legal advice affected by the risk that the attorney's clients, the client that hired the attorney to represent other elected officials, will not like that advice and will potentially terminate the attorney. This bill will work to the detriment of those officials and to the citizens who formerly elected their attorney. And while the bill does not require the creation of the Office of County Counsel, the mere threat that a board can eliminate the civil division of the DA's office will increase the risk of advice infected with the knowledge the attorney could be discharged. All the board will have to do is pass an ordinance or threaten to pass an ordinance. I only have 2 minutes, so I thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Just by the request of one of our members, if we could have you state your name for the record one more time and spell your last name. I don't know if you're on mute, but I know that I think the members were requesting for you to state your name one more time, if you could spell your last name.
I'm sorry, I was getting the message to unmute when I heard that. My name is David Watts Vial. The last name is WATTS-V as in Victor, IAL.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for calling in this morning.
Thank you.
I'd like to go to the members. We don't have any questions, correct? I don't see any on chat, but I want to make sure that if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Seeing none, we'll go to the next caller wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 147.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 269. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes. and may begin.
Leonardo Blundo, B-L-U-N-D-O. Good morning, committee members and Chair Flores. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Leo Blundo. I'm a Nye County Commissioner representing myself in my duly elected position. My thoughts and comments are of my own and of District 4. I share an opposing view to this bill. I'm opposed as it takes a constitutional power, checks and balances, and oversight away from an elected district attorney. The district attorney is somebody elected by the people, for the people, representing the people, and it also represents the county commission. I understand that in larger counties, potentially even in Washoe, but primarily in Clark County, they have a massive district attorney's office, and you have a board of county commissioners who are very active in doing a variety of things. However, that check and balance needs to, I believe, remain with the district attorney's office, no matter the size of your county. This particular bill, I believe, will create a bureaucratic position and will force that position to have to weight the propriety of the information that they bring forward, the legal opinions that they give their very employers, their clients, against their employment. And if there is an unfavorable position that is given, now all of a sudden there creates an inherent influence / conflict where their employment could be ceased and terminated. I noticed that there is no fiscal note. However, I'd like to share that even though it's proposed that you're going to take those civil attorneys from the DA's office and implement them into this new department created under the commission and or county management, what I will share with you is that the DA's office still would have a requirement to have civil attorneys because they represent a variety of other interests for the county as a whole. It's not just about the interest of the Board of County Commission. Although we have the authority and the powers to over the whole county, they would still have to have those individuals there. I believe a fiscal note just in the ballpark of $500,000 here in Nye County, it would have a detrimental effect. We don't have a strong ending fund balance. I know everyone's been affected by COVID, but just in a typical year, we just don't have the funds, and I think that would have a massive financial impact to us just here locally. I do want to point out, again, that is speaking from my district here in District 4 in Nye County, and it's just a perspective I'd like to share in opposition. I can appreciate, larger counties like Clark needing different requirements. And if you do choose to proceed, I would ask that you respect what works for the rural counties and make those determinations. Thank you so much for hearing this testimony, and I hope you all have a great day.
And thank you for calling in. Broadcast, if we could please go to the next caller wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 147.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 648. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the Assembly Government Affairs Committee. My name is John Jones, John Jones, and I am here on behalf of the Clark County District Attorney's Office in opposition to AB 147. I want to start off by thanking Assemblywoman Nguyen. Her and I have had many conversations on this bill over the last few months, and I appreciate truly her bringing our office into the discussion. I also want to thank Commissioner Sigerblum's kind words, and despite our numerous policy battles over the year, I do think highly of him as well. But our opposition to this bill is rooted in our belief that a public attorney providing legal advice be accountable to a separately elected official, and that provides a measure of independence that better ensures legally and ethically sound advice. I want to point out that we provide our best legal advice to the commission and to the various agencies, and it's up to the clients, the commissioners or agencies themselves, whether or not they want to follow the legal advice that we provide. This advice, free from threat of reprisal, ensures that the representation is in the best interest of the county and its residents. The reasoning is simple. Officials better informed of the consequences of their proposed actions make better informed decisions. Even though it's just enabling legislation, AB 147 could be used as a hammer against DAs providing unvarnished advice. If a county doesn't like the advice they are given, they can threaten to create the Office of County Counsel, thus causing a crack in the independence that we feel provides the best, most unbiased opinion. The Clark County DA's office specifically is more than willing to have conversations with our commissioners and others to discuss any problems they feel that are arising with the current model. We are committed to making this representation model work and are asking for the opportunity to work through these problems prior to the passing of this legislation. We made that commitment last session during AB 539, and we make that commitment again today. So with that, Chairman Flores, members of the Government Affairs Committee, I do thank you for your time. And if you have any additional questions about this bill, I'm more than happy to meet with you on an individual basis. Thank you.
And thank you. And I'm just going through the chat now, making sure that I don't have any members wishing to ask any questions. I don't believe so at this time. Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, if we could go to the next caller wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 147.
Caller with the last three digits of 389. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the Assembly Government Affairs Committee. My name is Jennifer Noble, Jennifer Noble, and I'm testifying here today representing the Nevada District Attorneys Association, which consists of the 17 elected district attorneys throughout Nevada. The Nevada District Attorneys Association opposes AB 147, and I'll try not to go too much over ground that's already been covered, but if a private client makes a poor decision regarding their litigation options when they're given those options, it's only the client that suffers. But if a public entity makes ill-advised decisions, the people of Nevada bear the brunt. That's why public officials, boards, and agencies not only need good legal representation, they need frank, objective advice from their attorneys. When public attorneys know they answer to an independently elected official, they're more likely to provide that kind of advice, that realistic, sound advice about legal options, rather than just telling a client what they think is going to please the client. Ensuring our county entities get the most candid legal advice, uninfluenced by some fear of reprisal, is not only good for the clients, but good for the taxpayers of the state because it's going to promote the best litigation outcomes. Attorney General employees represent many state entities, but they are all employees of the executive branch. Sometimes the agencies they represent have contrary interests, but Deputy Attorney Generals, DAGs, are trained to erect and honor ethical screens and follow the Nevada rules of professional responsibility to navigate those types of situations when they do come up. And county attorneys are no different. State attorneys follow the rules, and so do we. District attorneys have separate divisions and teams within those divisions. No deputy district attorney represents two different clients on the same matter when there is an actual or apparent conflict. We follow the rules of professional responsibility, client confidentiality, and ethical screens. The NDAA members are always willing to meet with any agencies whose concerns might underlie this piece of legislation. And we're, of course, committed to working with Assemblywoman Wynn and stakeholders to find common ground. And of course, I am willing to meet with any one of you individually to discuss your concerns. Thank you.
And thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, thank you again for your testimony.
Chair, I have a question.
Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I couldn't get into the chat quick enough to set my question. Thank you, Ms. Noble, for your statement today. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about who's required to complete the conflict resolution process, because my understanding would be that the district attorney would be responsible for doing that. And I feel like that in and of itself is a form of conflict. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I apologize, Assemblywoman. There was instructions from the system at the time that you were asking your questions, so I think I only got about a third of it. I believe it regards conflicts of interest and how those are handled. Is that correct?
Yes, because my understanding is that the district attorneys would be responsible for initiating that conflict resolution. And it just seems that that might be a conflict in and of itself. You could elaborate on that.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. I understand your point of view, and that's a good question, but you have to understand that at a law firm or any kind of legal shop, whether it's public or private, determining conflict is inherent in the legal profession. We do it all the time, and that's what we're trained to do. All attorneys are under a duty to avoid conflicts, no matter where they work, and to notify clients of conflicts, and to allow the client to get another attorney if that's what the client wants to do.
And so if you could just give a little bit of further clarification. So but at a private law firm, would they be able to handle both cases if there was that conflict?
There are situations, and I have worked in the private sector many years ago, where there might be what we call an apparent conflict, but not an actual conflict. And in those cases, there are specific rules in the Nevada Rules of Professional Responsibility that we follow to erect what's called an ethical screen. I've also done that in my division when things come up. I am in the appellate division that does criminal matters, but that's come up because we've had defense attorneys that later became prosecutors. And that's something that we do, and we make sure that the attorneys representing each respective client don't access information or have discussions about attorney-client strategy or anything the client might have disclosed in the course of the representation.
Again, Chair,
every attorney in Nevada has to do that.
And another follow-up question, if I may, Chair.
Please, Vice.
Thank you. And I don't mean to dominate the discussion. I just want to make sure I understand the clarification. I have enough clarification on this issue since it's such a complicated piece of legislation. I want to make sure that we do its due diligence as a legislative body. And so you had mentioned earlier that if a client, in the case of a private law firm, I know that if a client wanted another attorney, they would go out and they would get them. But in this instance, would that be possible when we're looking at cases that are managed by this division? Would that be possible to go out and just get a different attorney?
Yes, it is possible for the clients to go and get a different attorney.
All right, thank you, members. Any additional questions?
Yes, this is Assemblymember Anderson, if I may,
Please.
Mr. Chair.
Please,
So,
Assemblywoman.
Listening to that answer, I want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So if we are speaking about the county commission, and let's just use the example that was used earlier in the hearing, you have a child that is with the child welfare area. Who would the county commission report that to? Who would the DA member report it to? That there's a need for a different attorney, and that attorney would have to be outside of the DA division? Or am I misunderstanding that answer that you just gave?
So thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. If you have an attorney who perceives an apparent or actual conflict, the course of action is to notify the client of that, and also to notify, at least in our office, we would notify your supervisor so that we can make sure that the appropriate ethical screens are erected, or if the client chooses, they can seek independent representation.
Okay, so it would be at the supervisor level that would happen. But what if it was a parent that felt that there was an inherent bias? Who would they report that to? Would that again be the supervisor that is done in a private setting, or would that be done in a public forum, since again it is a county commissioner, it is an elected official who's able to do that? I need some clarification on that, because I feel like there's a conflict here that is not clearly being defined and or being put on a record if the client feels that there is a possible conflict of interest.
So the client can certainly notify whomever they want, including the district attorney. But you can also have an attorney-client session with the board, which is not public. So in that instance, the client could be notified, they can discuss and disclose the conflict, and the board could decide to have separate representation.
Thank you. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, and so I don't want to dominate this conversation, but thank you very much for that information.
Thank you. At this time, I don't think we have any further questions for you.
Chair Flores, may I just follow up? Thank you, Chair, for the ability to ask this question. So just to follow on Assemblywoman Anderson's question and what was said, does that mean that the Department of Family Services, in the situation like she presented, they can go out and get their own attorney, or are they not allowed to do that?
It is my understanding that they would be able to get their own attorney with approval within their department. But in Washoe County, we don't represent the Department of Family Services.
So would that be a specific question I should ask Clark County?
I think they may be better suited to answer your question. Yes, Assemblywoman.
Thank you. I'll follow up with Clark County.
Sounds good. And Ms. Duffy, I believe you wanted to intervene?
Yes, Chair Flores. I was trying to figure out how to get your attention. So maybe I'm best suited to answer the Assemblywoman's question. Just a point. So in Clark County, we have, by MOU, my attorneys represent the Child Welfare Agency. We do not represent individual case managers. We represent the policies and procedures of the agency. So, and the conflict, so somebody who raised the issue of the parent, it wouldn't be, we're talking about if a DFS case manager wants to reunify a child who has been the victim of sexual abuse, physical abuse, or neglect, my attorneys would go in, they would advise them, right? And they would go in front of the family court judge, and they would say, we would like to move toward reunification. At the same time, that same case may be criminally prosecuted by a whole separate deputy district attorney in a criminal case. And so let's just say it's a child sexual abuse case. And that child still has not testified in the criminal case. So that criminal DA is now saying they want a no contact order so that the child is not reunified into the home because now their testimony may be influenced, right? That's the fear from the criminal perspective. But our cases, again, move much faster and we have different standards. So the conflict would be whether or not the agency, because both DAs report up to their individual ADAs, me and a criminal one, and then up to DA Wolfson. Sorry, I talk with my hands. So we go up that way, right? So the conflict would be because DA Wolfson has moved toward an agency representation model. Is the criminal case request of a no contact order conflict with the client DFS, right? On that side, and that's where our conflict resolution comes into play. And we go up to the boss and talk about what the issues are. And then if we still cannot resolve the issues, but ultimately, the judges oversee these cases. So in the cases of child welfare law, our district court judges, we have district court judges, will reunify that family and have this criminal case proceed as whatever path it's going down. So that's ultimately the conflict. But then the question is, can DFS then get their own attorney? Yes, statutorily, if the DA's office refuses to prosecute a case for the Department of Family Services, they can go to the Attorney General's office and ask for representation. So there is already the ability in statute that if there is a disagreement between the DA's office and the Department of Family Services, that the Attorney General's office can step in.
And thank you. And follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please follow up.
Thank you. Nathan Anderson, Assemblymember Anderson. Oh, I'm so sorry, Assemblymember Costa. This is your question initially. Oops, sorry.
And I'm sorry, I didn't realize that it was Assemblywoman Anderson saying follow up. Give me 1 second, Assemblywoman. Assemblywoman tonight. Did you have a follow up?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Anderson. I just wanted to make clear and get on the record. So that does mean that in a situation where there is a conflict with the DA in a child welfare situation, that you're saying that DFS itself can go out and get another law firm to represent them if there is a conflict.
Bridget Duffy for the record. Assemblywoman, the statute already allows the DFS to go to the Attorney General's office if there is an issue with the District Attorney's office prosecuting the case in NRS 432B.
Okay, so then that would be another elected.
I guess that's another law firm, another elected, right?
Okay, another elected official, but not like an outside of that elected area law firm.
No.
Okay.
However, on the DA civil side, right, if there's an issue with prosecuting a lawsuit, so right, Child Protective Services gets sued when children have unfortunate events in foster care, or DA civil often gets outside counsel to handle those cases as well. So there are mechanisms for the civil division to get outside counsel for more complex cases already, which I assume they could add something in there if there was a specific conflict on a case.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And then if Assembly Anderson had a different question.
Yeah, thank you, Assemblywoman. Now we'll go back to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Duffy, for being so understanding about all these questions and everything. I think I understand what you're saying exactly. I'll just be very candid. The issue that I'm having is the DA's office is, for lack of a better term, it might be very large, but it is one office. And yes, you are moving up because I also speak with my hands. Yes, you are moving up to your supervisors, but that impression, which was given, which was something that everybody tries to not allow to happen, according to the last speaker, that impression is present where there's a possibility of information being shared. So how often, from your recollection, and I realize you might not have that recollection, and that could be something too that needs to have some more research. How often is that NRS statute utilized where discussions have happened where it's better to go outside of the DA's office for situations such as this that you were just describing?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Anderson. Bridget Duffy again for the record. I came over from the Attorney General's office in 2004. Prior to that, I handled foster care cases from 2000 to 2004 over there. So I've been around in the county since 2004. I have never had a circumstance where it has been requested that the Attorney General's office take over a case because of a disagreement between the DA's office and the Department of Family Services. We have had the Attorney General's office take over cases where there have been allegations of abuse or neglect by somebody who was employed by DFS, so on their own children. That is a conflict because I could not prosecute a case manager that is a part of DFS. So we have asked the Attorney General's office to step in when there have been allegations of county employees that have had abuse and neglect in their lives.
Thank you for that clarification. And I mean, there's a whole bunch, and I might reach out to you individually to have another conversation as well. But I do want to say thank you. I'm an educator, and I can just imagine what some of these child abuse cases are like, and it takes somebody with a great deal of strength to handle reading the information and then also protecting our kids. So thank you for the work that you're doing in that realm. I understand where you're coming from, but I still have some other questions that I might actually reach out to you individually about. Thank you.
And thank you, Assemblywoman. Members, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and state your name for the record. I don't see any on chat. Again, thank you for the conversation. Ms. Duffy, thank you for coming back into the conversation. At this time, I'd like to continue with those wishing to speak in opposition of Assembly Bill 147. Broadcast, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 116, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alexis Motorex, Alexis Motarex, with the Nevada Chapter AGC. We're here in opposition to AB 147. After speaking with the Washoe County District Attorney and learning that they and most of our neighboring counties have discrete civil and criminal divisions and policies in place to handle conflicts, we feel this measure is unnecessary. AGC feels that creating a new duplicative division of government and added layer of bureaucracy is not in the best and highest use of taxpayer dollars, especially when local governments are struggling to meet their existing obligations. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. At this time, I'd like to continue with those wishing to speak in opposition. Broadcast, if we could go to the next caller.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you, Broadcast. Now I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 147. Broadcast, please.
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 147, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate those who called in support opposition in neutral. At this time, I'd like to have the Assemblywoman come back with any closing remarks you may have.
Thank you. Thank you guys for this lively conversation. I know that my co-presenter, Commissioner Segerblum, I'm sure he is enjoying his new role on the County Commission, but I am sure he misses this banter and this policy discussion as they can become very lively. So I appreciate him taking some time to come and help me present this in his personal capacity. I just want to end. I would encourage people and I encourage the opposition to continue to reach out to me. Like I said, I have been available for quite some time. I appreciate the efforts of NACO and all of the counties around the state of Nevada that have come in, had these conversations with their members and decided to support this piece of legislation. Just briefly, I'm going to touch on a couple of things that came up during the opposition. I'm not really sure I understand this argument that the county commission would fire their counsel and why the reverse wouldn't be the same. If the district attorney gave an elected DA advice that they did not agree on, the DA could still fire them under this reasoning. And so this whole reverse assumption is crazy. This whole assumption that the DAs have to oversee elected county commissioners or city councilmen and women and that they are not independent elected officials in their own right is just something I don't understand, but I will welcome the conversations to still have that. I probably should be personally offended of the representations made in the opposition as private attorneys that somehow I'm not held to the same ethical standards as district attorneys. But I will assure you, and I'm sure other members of the legal community all hold ourselves out to the same ethical standards, whether we were county council or whatever our title is. But with that being said, I will continue to have these conversations to get this policy right. This is done across the country. It's time for Nevada to grow up and have a process that ensures due process for all individuals within the elected system. And with that, I'd submit.
Thank you again, Assemblywoman, for taking on this conversation. And I appreciate you having preemptively reached out and had conversations prior to today's hearing. Understandably, there's a whole host of perspectives, and I know the committee is committed to helping you find resolution through this bill and address some of these issues of conflict that have been raised. I'd like to go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 147. And Mr. Segerblum, again, thank you for joining us today. Welcome back to your house as always. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Broadcast, if we could please go to public comment. I want to remind those of you wishing to speak in public comment that we are no longer hearing Assembly Bill 147. This is not a time to reopen the hearing, dialogue, discourse, and/or debate on that bill. We've closed that out. This is the time and opportunity for you to speak on general matters that relate to this committee. And I ask that you please limit your remarks to 2 minutes. Broadcast, please.
To take place in the public comment queue, please press *9 now. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no more callers at this time.
Thank you. I want to thank the members. We had some good lengthy discussion this week, and I appreciate everybody's participation and attentiveness and willingness to engage in dialogue that at times we may or may not agree with. I know that everybody's going to be in horrible pain at the announcement that we shall not be meeting tomorrow. I know that it's horrible for everybody, but I think our staff needs a break, and all of you deserve it too. I see Assemblyman Ellison in tears, but feel free to give me a call, and I will greatly entertain a 45-minute conversation on easements or some other great stuff that you'd like if you feel the need to do so. Thank you, members. Please pay close attention to next week's agenda in that we are still making some last-minute modifications. That is not purposeful to the public and members. I just want to give you a heads up on why we're doing it this way. There are bills that we were trying to get scheduled, but by the request of sponsors, they are still working with stakeholders and do not feel prepared or want to give the opposition an opportunity to echo some of those concerns and see if they can reach some type of amicable agreement prior to having the presentation. So I'm trying to be as respectful of that as possible. So we are still in the process of slightly making some modifications to the agenda, which is why you have not seen something posted yet, but we're working on that diligently and you should see something up soon. With that, members, I appreciate the work again. This meeting's adjourned.